I have something really delightful to share with you today. So my company, Os Justi Press, it obviously is a publisher. It publishes books, paperbacks, hardcovers on Catholic tradition. I have a novel by a Romanian novelist coming out soon, canon law studies, spiritual books, all kinds of things. You can check it out on the website. But my son, Julian, and I collaborated recently to produce a whole set of traditional Catholic mugs, coffee and tea mugs. I subsist on coffee, so these are very useful items. We wanted to make something useful, beautiful, and edifying. And I'm going to share with you the quotes and the pictures that we put on these mugs. I mostly came up with the quotations and ideas, and he did the actual graphics design, which he has a real gift for. So I have these in some groups. So I'm just going to start with this trio here. This mug right here has a picture of a server with incense and the people kneeling with candles. And it has a text from Romano Guardini. It says, "The offering of incense is a generous and beautiful rite. It is a prodigal waste of precious material. It is a pouring out of unwithholding love. It is as free and objectless as beauty. It burns and is consumed like love that lasts through death. It is the offering of a sweet savor, which Scripture tells us is the prayers of the saints. Like pure prayer, incense has in view no object of its own. It asks for nothing for itself. It rises like the Gloria Patri at the end of a psalm in adoration and thanksgiving to God for his great glory." That's that mug. Then I have this wonderful quotation from St. Bridget of Sweden. It's on a mug with, let's see if I can get this right, with a priest elevating the host surrounded by angels. There's a nice little illuminated initial on there. And the text says, "One day when a priest was celebrating Mass, I saw at the moment of consecration how all the powers of heaven were set in motion. I heard at the same time a heavenly music, most harmonious, most sweet. Numberless angels came down, the chant of whom no human understanding could conceive, nor the tongue of man describe. They surrounded and looked upon the priest, bowing towards him in reverential awe. The devils commenced to tremble and took to flight in greatest confusion and terror." Here is a Splendid Mug. It's a larger format mug with, again, a medieval illumination. This one's a neat design because it has this whole wraparound design of the Mass, right? And it has one of my favorite quotations from the philosopher Aristotle. "The most commendable expenditure is that which is directed to divine sacrifices." Score one for the virtuous pagans. Here is another Guardini mug. This one features a lovely image of the priest and the server at Low Mass genuflecting at the time of the last Gospel. And from Martin Travers, it's a wonderful book full of rubrical pictures. And the text says, "But when does our littleness so come home to us as when we stand in God's presence? One has no need to be told that God's presence is not the place in which to stand on one's dignity. To appear less presumptuous, to be as little and low as we feel, we sink to our knees and thus sacrifice half our height. And to satisfy our hearts still further, we bow down our heads, and our diminished stature speaks to God and says, 'Thou art the great God, I am nothing.' It is an act of humility, an act of truth, and every time you kneel, it will do your soul good." We need to get some of these mugs for the bishops in their national Eucharistic revival so they can appreciate what would really make a difference in that regard. Then I've got a trio of mugs that deal with the post-Traditionis Custodes situation of persecution of traditional Catholics. So here is a wonderful text from Nicholas Gear from his classic work on the Mass, and it's partnered with the famous painting of the underground home Mass, which a number of people are experiencing these days, and certainly did during COVID tide as well. And here's what Nicholas Gear says. When the storm of persecution raged throughout the whole world, the stream of grace and benediction poured from the Holy Mass, celebrated in the catacombs or underground caverns. Just as at a much later period, this holy sacrifice, persecuted by Protestantism, took refuge in the garrets. But even in this dire extremity, the attractive power of the Mass was not weakened. Catholics went down into underground dens, into the catacombs, and climbed up under the rafters of houses to pray for those whose hatred had driven to the most wretched nooks what was most holy to them, and who were vaunting themselves in edifices reared by Catholic piety. In a similar way, St. Basil the Great said, this was during the time of the Arian controversy, "Only one offense is now vigorously punished, an accurate observance of our fathers' traditions. The people are in lamentation, in continual tears at home and abroad. There is a cry in the city, a cry in the country, in the roads, in the deserts. Our houses of prayer are shut up, our altars deprived of the spiritual worship. Sacred things are profaned. Those of the laity who are sound in faith avoid the official places of worship as schools of impiety, and raise their hands in solitudes with groans and tears to the Lord in heaven." That quotation has another one of these lovely illuminated initials, and on the other side, an ancient work of art showing a priest and another faithful worshiping in the desert outdoors. You can see the plants outdoors, right? So that's the situation that St. Basil is talking about during the Arian crisis. Here we have a mug with another interesting painting on it, once again of a mass in a home. You can see a prince is actually serving this mass, and some peasants are bowing at the elevation. And the text, once again with an illuminated initial, is taken from Neil McCaffrey, the great American conservative publisher. He says, "Let us turn their own nonconformity against them. If they have the freedom to preach contempt of the church we know and love, surely we have the freedom to defend, to resist, to cherish what is part of ourselves. As Americans, we are accustomed to exercise generous freedoms in the temporal sphere. We are not used to having to use them in the church. Now we must, or be swept away. And the radicals do mean to sweep us away. They preach freedom, but only their own brand. They leave in their wake a totalitarian stink." That was written in the 1970s, right? We are back to the 70s, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly where we are. And we'll survive just as they did. Then I have just a few more here. We did a whole series of them, 13 of them, in fact. This mug is especially beautiful. It has a wraparound image of medieval peasants going to church. It's really a lovely painting from a manuscript. And it has a text from Edmund Burke, the great conservative philosopher. "When ancient opinions and rules of life are taken away, the loss cannot possibly be estimated. From that moment we have no compass to govern us, nor can we know distinctly to what port we steer." And in a sort of related, almost opposite way, we have Saint Teresa of Jesus, Saint Teresa of Avila, on this particular mug, which has a magnificent monochrome engraving of a solemn mass going on. It wraps all the way around the mug. Saint Teresa says famously, "I would give up my life 1,000 times, not only for each truth of the faith, but for the least of the church's ceremonies." That's the attitude that traditionalists have. Dom Gerard Calvay, founder of Le Barroux Monastery and a hero of the faith, he said, "Tradition is the youth of God." Tradition is the youth of God. And that's what you see on this mug. It has it printed there on the front with another one of these Martin Travers images on the back or the other side. And it's one of the mugs that's bicolor, so it's got the yellow on the inside. And then I'm going to end this whole series with the sacred and great principle. Okay, this mug right here, it's a red and white mug with the Os Justi Press logo on it. And then on the back, it says as follows: "What earlier generations held as sacred remains sacred and great for us, too." That, of course, is Pope Benedict XVI in the letter that accompanied Summorum Pontificum in 2007. So I'm not going to talk anymore because this is already long enough, but I shared the mugs with you. I hope that you'll check them out. They're all available at the Os Justi website. You can order them there. There's some other neat things too that you might not have known about. So thank you. Happy Easter. God bless you.